Hi, it's Chris. In this video we're going to show you how to remove and reinstall the door hinge on your Whirlpool dryer. Removing and reinstalling the hinge on your dryer is actually quite easy and just requires a few basic tools. Keep in mind if your machine needs to be repaired, it's usually simple enough to do it yourself. Visit PartSelect.com, enter your model number, and quickly find and order the part you need. Some of the reasons you'll be looking at having to remove and replace the door hinge on your dryer is over time through normal wear and tear. You're going to find that there's been some stresses put on the hinge so that the door may no longer close nice and evenly. You have to actually lift the door in order to get it to close. So the first thing we want to do before we remove and replace the part is take the power off from the dryer. Now the parts we're working on are not electrified, but we're going to have the door off or open, in which case the interior light may be on. So instead of wasting that energy, we're just going to unplug the dryer. So now that we have the power turned off to the dryer, next thing we're going to do is basically open the door. And you can see there's two screws that actually mount the hinge and the door directly to the cabinet of the dryer. So we're just going to remove those. So I'll start with the bottom one. And these are just Phillips screws. Now we'll go for the second one, which is the upper screw. Now that's one screw still has the whole weight of the entire door on it. So I'm just going to support it with my hand by holding underneath the door itself and just remove this screw. So there, now our door is completely free to come off. So I'm just going to take the door and I'm going to lay it up on top of the dryer. So I've got a blanket on top of the dryer just so I don't scratch the dryer itself or the door. So our next thing we need to do is to separate the back half of the dryer door from the front half. And that's easily done just by removing all of these screws around the perimeter of the dryer door. So I'm just going to use my screw gun. It's a Phillips tip, just for quickly removing these screws. Remove the door strike and just set it to one side along with the screws. So now that I have all the screws removed, I'm simply going to flip this door over. And now I'm just going to lift off the outer portion of the door away from the back side. So now we can see the cover that goes over where the door hinge is mounted. And we just need to remove those screws. So now with those screws removed, this retaining bracket just needs to be lifted off. But what you want to do, because it has tabs that go underneath these plastic lips, is just tip it upwards and slide it out of position. Now we can see where our part's located. And now to remove it, we just lift it up out of place. And then we want to remove the caps. So there you go. It's just that easy to remove the hinge off your Whirlpool dryer. So to install our part, the first thing we want to do is make sure we have the hinge aligned with the door. In other words, we want this curve of the hinge to follow the curve of the door. If we were to try and install it this way, we would have a real problem trying to mount it in. So we're just going to bring our hinge into position, slide our hinge caps onto the hinge, and now we're just going to bring the hinge into position so that the arm with the caps drops into the plastic. So now we just need to put our retaining bracket in place, which is very easy. We're just going to bring it into position, and you just want to tip the back side or the side that's closest to the glass in a little bit so that the metal goes underneath these plastic tabs. And then it'll just drop down into place, and now we want to put our screws back in. Now I'm not a big fan of using a screw gun, but I did to do the disassembly. because it's quick and fast and easy where there's so many screws. But putting it back together, I'm going to use a hand screwdriver just because, as you notice, these are plastic where these screws came out of, and you just want to try not to have to create new thread holes when you put the screws in. So you want to take and set your screw into the hole, just turn your screwdriver backwards a short amount until you feel the screw drop into the threads, and then secure it. Doing this saves the possibility of stripping out that hole, because if you do, then you wind up having to replace the part and you're looking at more money and more time. Now that's all back together and snugged up. We can bring back the front of our dryer door, set it into place, flip it over, and put the rest of the screws back in. Just squeeze it together, squeeze with both hands and flip it over. And now we can put our screws back in. Now we'll mount our door strike. So now we just need to mount the door itself to the cabinet of the dryer, and this is probably the trickiest part of the whole thing. So we're just going to bring our door into position. Now the trick is to support the door with one hand and get a screw started for the hinge. So you may have to sort of lift or drop the assembly in your hand there a little bit so you can get that screw to line up and go into position. So I'm not going to snug that screw up. I'm going to leave it a little bit loose, so that'll give me some play if I need it when I put in the bottom screw. I'll also take the weight of the door and just be able to make it easier to get that screw lined up and thread it into place. Now you want to tighten that up really well. Now all you need to do is close the door. And there you go. It's just that easy to remove and replace the door hinge on your Whirlpool dryer.